My name is Shanice Williams, and I'm 34 years old. On what felt like the worst day of my life, I sat in that ice-cold courtroom, watching my husband Malcolm demand everything: our house, our savings, and full custody of our daughter. The judge was about to rule in his favor when suddenly, a small voice cut through the silence. It was my 10-year-old daughter, Amara. "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling but clear, "may I show you something that Mom doesn't know about?" The judge nodded. My heart stopped. What could Amara possibly know that I didn't? What secret had my baby been keeping from me? She stepped forward, pulled out her phone, and pressed play. The moment that video started playing on those courtroom monitors, the entire room froze in complete silence. What appeared on that screen didn't just shock the judge, it destroyed my husband's lies and exposed a betrayal so cruel, so calculated, so evil, that I still can't believe it happened to me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand how a man I loved, a man I trusted with my whole heart, turned into the monster who tried to take everything from me. Before the story begins, please drop a comment telling us which state or city you're watching from. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so we can keep bringing you these powerful true stories. My life in Atlanta used to feel like a blessing. I had a beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood, a daughter who was my whole world, and a husband who I thought loved me. But looking back now, I realize I was living in a carefully constructed lie. Every morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. 5 in the morning, y'all. While Malcolm was still sleeping peacefully in our bed, I was already in the kitchen preparing his breakfast. Eggs, turkey bacon, whole wheat toast, fresh orange juice, and black coffee exactly how he liked it. I made sure his shirts were pressed and hanging in the closet. I made sure his briefcase was by the door. I made sure everything was perfect, because that's what I thought a good wife was supposed to do. By 6:30, I was waking up Amara, my sweet 10-year-old baby girl. I'd help her pick out her clothes, brush her thick curly hair into 2 perfect puffs, make sure she had her homework packed, and prepare her favorite breakfast chocolate chip pancakes with strawberries. We'd sit together at the kitchen table, and she'd tell me about what she was learning in school, about her friends, about the new book she was reading. Those morning moments with Amara were everything to me. They were pure, they were real. They were the only time I felt truly happy anymore. Malcolm would come down around 7, already dressed in one of those expensive suits he loved so much. He'd sit at the table, scroll through his phone, drink his coffee, and barely say 2 words to me. Maybe a grunt. Maybe, the coffee's cold, even when I knew it was hot. Maybe nothing at all. I'd watch him kiss Amara on the forehead, tell her to have a good day at school, and then he'd walk right past me like I was invisible. No kiss. No hug. No, thank you for breakfast, baby. Nothing. He'd just grab his briefcase and leave, and I'd be standing there in that big, empty kitchen feeling like I didn't even exist. But I told myself it was just stress. Malcolm worked hard as a senior project manager at a construction firm. He was tired. He had a lot on his mind. That's what I kept telling myself. That's the lie I kept feeding myself every single day. I quit my job 8 years ago when Amara was born. I had a good career in marketing, y'all. I was making decent money, had my own benefits, had my own independence. But Malcolm convinced me to stay home. He said, "Shanice, our daughter needs her mother. I make enough money for all of us. You don't need to work. Just take care of our home and our baby." And like a fool, I believed him. I gave up everything. My career, my income, my financial independence, I gave it all up because I trusted my husband. For 8 years, I poured everything I had into being the perfect wife and mother. I kept that house spotless. I cooked every meal from scratch. I did all the laundry, all the cleaning, all the grocery shopping. I helped Amara with her homework every night. I volunteered at her school. I organized play dates. I was there for every single moment of my daughter's life. And Malcolm? Malcolm was barely there at all. Over the past year, things got worse. He started coming home later and later. Working late, he'd say. Big project, he'd say. Don't wait up, he'd say. Some nights he wouldn't come home until 10 or 11 o'clock. And when he did, he'd go straight to the guest room without even speaking to me. We used to have family dinners every Sunday. That was our tradition. But even those became painful. Malcolm would sit at the table with his phone in his hand, scrolling through emails or text messages, barely touching the food I'd spent hours preparing. When I'd try to make conversation, he'd give me one-word answers. When Amara would try to tell him about her week, he'd nod without really listening. I felt like I was disappearing, like I was becoming invisible in my own home. But I held on. I kept trying. I kept believing that if I just worked harder, if I just did more, if I just loved him better, things would go back to the way they used to be. I was so blind. So incredibly, painfully blind. There were signs, y'all. Red flags everywhere, and I ignored every single one of them. Malcolm started wearing this new cologne, something expensive and musky that I'd never smelled before. When I asked him about it, he said it was a gift from a colleague. I believed him. There were receipts in his pockets for restaurants I'd never been to, for flowers I'd never received, for jewelry I'd never seen. When I asked about them, he'd say they were business expenses or gifts for clients. I believed him. His phone was always face down on the table. He changed his passcode. He started taking calls in the other room. And when I'd walk into a room while he was on the phone, he'd suddenly lower his voice or hang up quickly. Every time I questioned it, he'd accuse me of being paranoid or insecure. And like a fool, I believed him. But my daughter saw everything. My sweet Amara was watching, and she was smarter than both of us ever realized. The day my world collapsed started like any other Tuesday afternoon. I had just picked Amara up from school, and we were sitting at the kitchen table. She was working on her math homework, and I was helping her with fractions when I heard a loud knock at the door. I opened it to find a FedEx delivery man holding a large manila envelope. "Shanice Williams?" he asked. "Yes, that's me," I said, signing for the package. My hands were shaking as I closed the door. I don't know why, but something in my gut told me this wasn't going to be good. The envelope had the logo of a law firm in the corner, Morrison & Associates, attorneys at law. I told Amara to keep working on her homework, and I went into the living room. I sat down on the couch and opened that envelope, and what I saw inside made my entire world crumble. Petition for dissolution of marriage. I read those words over and over again, hoping I was seeing things wrong. But there it was, in black and white. Malcolm was divorcing me. But it wasn't just a divorce, it was a complete annihilation. The document accused me of being a failed wife. It said I had completely failed in the fulfillment of marital duties. It called me emotionally unstable. It called me an unfit mother. It said I was incapable of properly raising our daughter. And then came the demands. And y'all, these demands made me physically sick. Malcolm was demanding full custody of Amara. Not shared custody, not joint custody, full custody. He wanted to take my baby away from me completely. He was demanding the house that I had turned into a home, the house where I had raised our daughter, the house where I had spent 8 years of my life. He was demanding all the marital assets, the savings, the cars, everything. His reasoning? I hadn't contributed financially, so I deserved nothing. 8 years of being a stay-at-home mother, of sacrificing my career, of dedicating my entire life to our family, and according to him, I deserved nothing. I sat on that couch with papers scattered around me, and I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold the papers anymore. Tears were streaming down my face, and I couldn't stop them. How could he do this? How could the man I loved, the man I had given everything to, how could he try to destroy me like this? I heard the front door open. Malcolm came home early that day, the first time in months he'd been home before 8 p.m. And suddenly, I understood why. He wanted to see my reaction. He wanted to watch me break. He walked into the living room and saw me on the floor, surrounded by the divorce papers, tears streaming down my face. And you know what he did? He didn't look surprised. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look sad. He looked satisfied. "Honey, what does this mean?" I managed to choke out through my tears. Malcolm took off his shoes slowly, deliberately. He loosened his tie and walked over to where I was sitting. He looked down at me with these cold, dead eyes that I didn't even recognize anymore. "It means exactly what you read, Shanice," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "I don't want to live with you anymore. You failed. You failed as a wife, and you failed as a mother." Those words hit me like physical blows. Failed as a wife? Failed as a mother? Failed? I screamed at him, my voice cracking with pain and disbelief. "I've taken care of this house. I've raised our daughter. I've given up everything for this family. How have I failed?" Malcolm laughed. Actually laughed, y'all. A cold, cruel laugh that made my blood run cold. "Taken care of the house?" he said with this disgusting smirk on his face. "All you've done is spend my money. Amara needs a better mother, a competent one, not someone who only knows how to cry and complain like you." I tried to stand up, but my legs wouldn't work. "You can't take Amara from me. You can't take everything. This isn't fair. This isn't right." Malcolm crouched down so his face was level with mine, and what he said next, I will never forget as long as I live. "I can, and I will," he said, his voice low and venomous. "My lawyer has everything prepared. All the evidence we need. You won't get a single dollar, Shanice. You'll leave this house with nothing. And get ready for this, even your own daughter is going to testify in court about how incompetent you are as a mother." I felt like I'd been stabbed in the chest. "What? No, Amara would never—" "She will," Malcolm said, standing up and smoothing his suit jacket, "because she knows the truth. You're not fit to be her mother." He walked away from me like he'd just told me what he wanted for dinner, not like he'd just destroyed my entire life. He went upstairs to the guest room and locked the door, leaving me collapsed on the living room floor, sobbing so hard I thought I might die. That night was the longest night of my life. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think straight. All I could do was sit in Amara's room and watch her sleep, terrified that this might be one of the last nights I'd ever get to do this. How could Malcolm say that Amara would testify against me? What lies had he been filling her head with? What poison had he been dripping into my baby's ears when I wasn't around? The next morning, I was completely numb. Malcolm acted like nothing had happened. He woke up, got dressed in another one of his expensive suits, and went to wake up Amara for school. He made her breakfast, something he never did, and I watched from the doorway as he played the role of the perfect father. "Good morning, princess," he said to her, his voice dripping with fake warmth. "Daddy made you some cereal. Let's get you ready for school." Amara looked confused. She kept glancing at me, like she could tell something was wrong. But Malcolm kept her distracted, kept her focused on him. When they left for school, I was alone in that big house, and reality started to sink in. I had to fight this. I had to find a way to protect myself and my daughter. But how? I had no money. For 8 years, Malcolm had controlled all the finances. He gave me a monthly allowance for groceries and Amara's school expenses. But that was it. I had no savings of my own, no income, no financial independence whatsoever. My hands shaking, I grabbed my phone and opened our banking app. We had a joint account, the one I thought was our family's emergency fund. The account that was supposed to have our savings in it. I entered the password, waited for the app to load, and when I saw the balance, I thought I was going to pass out. $0, 0 cents. That account was completely empty. No, I whispered, refreshing the app over and over again, hoping it was some kind of error. But the number didn't change, 0. I clicked on the transaction history with trembling fingers, and what I saw made me want to scream. For the past 6 months, Malcolm had been systematically withdrawing money from our account. Large amounts, $10,000 here, $20,000 there, $15,000, $30,000. The withdrawals happened every few weeks. and every single one of them was transferred to an account I didn't recognize. The last withdrawal had been made 3 days ago. He had emptied the remaining $75,000 from our account, leaving me with absolutely nothing. I ran upstairs to our bedroom, my heart pounding. I went to my jewelry box, the one that held my wedding rings, my grandmother's pearl necklace that she'd left me when she died, the diamond earrings Malcolm had given me on our 5th anniversary. I opened the box, and it was empty. Completely empty except for a few cheap costume jewelry pieces. Everything of value was gone. He had stolen everything. He had planned this for months, maybe even longer. He had systematically robbed me of every dollar, every valuable possession, every bit of financial security I had. And then he had the audacity to accuse me of being financially irresponsible in his divorce papers. I collapsed on the bedroom floor and cried until I had no tears left. I felt so stupid, so blind, so completely betrayed. But I couldn't give up. I had to fight for Amara. Even if I had to fight with nothing, I had to try. I called an old friend from my marketing days, Keisha, and told her everything. She was horrified. She immediately gave me the name of a lawyer, attorney Marcus Thompson. She said he was honest, compassionate, and worked with clients who couldn't afford expensive legal fees. The next day, I took a cab to his office. It was in a small building downtown, nothing fancy, but when I met attorney Marcus Thompson, I felt a tiny spark of hope for the first time in days. Marcus was a black man in his late 40s, with kind eyes and a calm presence. He listened to my entire story without interrupting. He took notes. He nodded. And when I was done, he looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "Shanice, your husband isn't just divorcing you. He's trying to destroy you, but we're not going to let him. We're going to fight." I started crying again, but this time they were tears of relief. Someone believed me. Someone was going to help me. Marcus asked to see the divorce papers Malcolm had filed, and I handed them over. He spent about 20 minutes reading through everything, and I watched his expression change from concerned to angry. "This is bad, Shanice," he finally said. "Your husband's lawyer is Derek Whitman. He's known for being ruthless, and they've built a strong case against you, at least on paper." He showed me the evidence they'd compiled. There were photographs, photos of my house looking like a disaster, dirty dishes piled in the sink, toys scattered all over the living room, laundry overflowing from baskets, beds unmade. "These photos were taken when I was sick," I shouted, feeling anger rise up in me for the first time. I had the flu. I was in bed with a fever of 103 for almost a week. Malcolm refused to help with anything. He said he was too busy with work. Of course the house was a mess. I was too sick to move. Marcus nodded sympathetically. "I believe you, Shanice. But in court, these photos will be powerful evidence. They'll use them to paint you as neglectful and lazy." Then he showed me credit card statements, thousands and thousands of dollars in charges for designer handbags, expensive jewelry, luxury spa treatments, fancy dinners at high-end restaurants. "I didn't buy any of this," I said, my voice rising in panic. "I've never bought a designer handbag in my life. I don't even know what half these stores are." "This was an additional card in your name, correct?" Marcus asked. "Yes, but Malcolm had it. He said his main card kept hitting the limit because of business expenses, so he needed to use mine sometimes. I trusted him. I never checked the statements because I thought he was just using it for work stuff or groceries." Marcus rubbed his temples. "Shanice, he set you up. He made all these purchases using your card so he could make it look like you were the one spending recklessly." The realization hit me like a freight train. Every kind gesture, every time Malcolm said, "Don't worry about it, I'll handle the bills," every time he took my credit card saying he'd forgotten his, it was all part of his plan to frame me. But the worst was yet to come. Marcus pulled out a thick document and placed it in front of me. "This is the most damaging piece of evidence they have, Shanice. It's an expert witness report from a child psychologist named Dr. Simone Garrett." I grabbed the report and started reading, and with every sentence I felt sicker and sicker. Dr. Garrett claimed she had conducted covert observations of me and Amara over a 3-month period. She said she'd watched us at the park, at the grocery store, at the mall, at Amara's school. Her findings were devastating. She claimed I was emotionally volatile and unstable. She said I yanked Amara aggressively in public and made her cry. She said I ignored Amara's needs and was more focused on my phone than my child. She said when Amara fell at the playground, I reacted with excessive hysteria that further traumatized the child. Her professional conclusion? That I suffered from emotional dysregulation and projected my unhappiness onto my daughter. She recommended that full custody be granted to Malcolm for the child's psychological well-being and mental health. I threw the report across the room. I was so angry. This is complete lies, I screamed. Every single word is a lie. Do you know this woman? This Dr. Simone Garrett? Marcus asked carefully. No, I've never heard of her in my entire life. I've never met her. How could she have been observing me if I've never even seen her? Marcus leaned back in his chair. That's what makes this so dangerous, Shanice. Her credentials are legitimate. She's a licensed psychologist with years of experience. On paper, she looks completely credible. And covert observation is a recognized method in child psychology. The court will take her testimony very seriously. I felt defeated all over again. How was I supposed to fight against fake photos, fake credit card charges, and a fake psychologist report? I had nothing. No money, no evidence, no proof of my side of the story. I can't afford you, I finally admitted, my voice barely a whisper. Malcolm took everything. I have maybe $200 in cash hidden in my purse. That's it. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, let's worry about payment later. Right now, we need to prepare your defense. This lawsuit has already been filed. We have a deadline to respond, and then we're going to trial. We need to move fast. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had a fighting chance. But things at home got so much worse. Malcolm didn't move out. He stayed in that house, living in the guest room, and he made my life a living hell. He started bringing home expensive gifts for Amara, a brand new iPad Pro, designer clothes, a collection of American Girl dolls she'd been wanting, toys and gadgets I could never afford to buy her. Every time he gave her something, he'd make a show of it in front of me. See, princess? Daddy takes care of you. Daddy makes sure you have everything you need. Not like some people who can't even provide the basics. He'd say it with this smile on his face, and Amara would be so excited about her new gifts that she wouldn't even notice the cruelty in his words. But I noticed. Oh, I noticed every single dig, every single insult, every single attempt to make me look small and useless in my daughter's eyes. He started undermining me constantly. If I cooked dinner, he'd take one bite and say, "This is kind of bland, isn't it, Amara? Maybe we should just order pizza instead. Daddy will pay for good food." If I tried to help Amara with her homework, he'd swoop in and push me aside. "Let me help you, princess. Mommy's way is too confusing. You'll learn it wrong if she teaches you." If I asked Amara to clean her room, he'd tell her, "Don't worry about it, baby girl. Mommy's just being grumpy. You don't have to listen to her." Every single day, he was systematically destroying my authority as a mother, making Amara doubt me, making her think I was the problem. And I saw it working. My sweet baby girl started looking at me differently, with confusion, with hesitation, with doubt. One night, after Malcolm had taken Amara out for ice cream without telling me, she came into my room at bedtime. I was sitting on my bed, crying quietly, and she climbed up next to me. "Mommy, why are you crying?" she asked, her voice small and worried. I wiped my tears quickly, trying to smile. "I'm okay, baby. Mommy just has a headache." "Daddy says you're sick," Amara said, and my heart stopped. "He says that's why you're sad all the time. He says if I go live with him, you'll be able to rest and get better." The room started spinning. Malcolm had been poisoning her mind, making her think that leaving me would be helping me, that abandoning her mother was an act of kindness. I pulled Amara close and hugged her so tight. Baby girl, listen to me. I'm not sick. I'm just sad because Daddy and I are having problems. But I love you more than anything in this entire world. Do you understand me? I love you so much. Amara hugged me back, but I could feel her uncertainty. The damage was already done. That night, I noticed something strange. After Amara fell asleep, I went to tuck her blanket around her, and I saw the corner of her old phone sticking out from under her pillow. It was the phone she'd had before Malcolm bought her the new iPad, an old iPhone with a cracked screen that barely worked anymore. Why was she keeping it under her pillow? Why not use the new iPad Malcolm bought her? I didn't understand it then, but I should have. My baby girl was smarter than all of us. One afternoon, about a week before our court hearing, something happened that showed me just how far Malcolm had sunk into evil. I was in the kitchen making Amara's after-school snack when I heard Malcolm's car pull into the driveway. But it was only 2 o'clock. School didn't get out until 3:30. I looked out the window and saw Malcolm get out of the car with Amara. They were both laughing, and Amara was holding a huge stuffed unicorn. I ran outside, my heart racing. What's going on? Where was Amara? Why isn't she at school? Malcolm smirked at me. I picked her up early. Took her to Six Flags. She had a great time, didn't you, princess? Amara nodded happily, clutching her unicorn. Daddy won this for me. We went on all the rides. You didn't tell me you were picking her up? I shouted, feeling panic and anger rising in my chest. You can't just take her out of school without telling me. I'm her mother. And I'm her father, Malcolm shot back coldly. I don't need your permission to spend time with my own daughter. That's when I smelled it. That perfume. That same sweet, expensive perfume I'd been smelling on Malcolm's shirts for months. But this time it was stronger, more obvious, like whoever wore it had been sitting very close to him recently. Who were you with? I demanded, my voice shaking. Malcolm walked right past me, leading Amara into the house. But he stopped at the door and turned back with this evil smile on his face. Did you finally figure it out, Shanice? He said quietly so Amara couldn't hear. Did you really think I'd spend the rest of my life with someone as boring and pathetic as you? She's everything. You're not successful, intelligent, beautiful, and she actually knows how to please a man. I couldn't breathe. There's someone else. There's another woman. Of course there is, Malcolm said with a laugh. And soon she's going to be Amara's new mother. Someone competent, someone worthy. He walked into the house, leaving me standing in the driveway, feeling like my heart had been ripped out of my chest. Everything made sense now. The late nights, the cologne, the perfume, the phone calls he'd take in private. There was another woman, and Malcolm was planning to replace me with her. Not just as his wife, but as Amara's mother. The court-ordered mediation was a complete disaster. It was supposed to be a chance for both sides to negotiate and maybe reach a settlement without going to trial, but Malcolm had no intention of negotiating anything. We sat in a small conference room, me and attorney Marcus on one side, Malcolm and his lawyer, Derek Whitman, on the other side, with a court mediator trying to keep the peace. Marcus started calmly. My client is willing to be reasonable. She's not asking for much. Shanice just wants shared custody of Amara and a fair division of the marital assets. She's willing to discuss the details. Before Marcus could even finish his sentence, Derek Whitman cut him off with a wave of his hand. There's nothing to discuss, Whitman said sharply. He was a tall white man in an expensive designer suit, and he spoke with this arrogant tone that made my blood boil. Our client's position is clear and non-negotiable. He slammed a thick folder onto the table, making me jump. Mrs. Williams has failed in every aspect of this marriage, Whitman continued, his voice dripping with contempt. The evidence we have, photographic evidence, financial evidence, and expert psychological testimony, proves beyond any doubt that she is unfit as a wife and as a mother. That's not true, I started to say, but Marcus put his hand on my arm, silently telling me to stay calm. Whitman ignored me completely and kept talking. Our client is generously offering Mrs. Williams the opportunity to walk away from this marriage with her dignity somewhat intact. If she signs the agreement we've prepared, she can leave without a drawn-out trial that will publicly humiliate her." "What agreement?" Marcus asked, though his tone made it clear he knew it wouldn't be fair. Whitman pulled out another document and slid it across the table. Marcus and I read it together, and I felt sick. The agreement gave Malcolm full custody of Amara. I would get supervised visitation only 2 hours every other Sunday, supervised by a court-appointed monitor. I would get none of the marital assets. No house, no savings, no cars, nothing. I'd have to leave with only my personal belongings. "This is insane," I shouted, unable to stay quiet anymore. "You want to take my daughter and leave me homeless with nothing?" Malcolm finally spoke up, and his voice was calm and measured, like he'd practiced this speech. "Shanice, I'm trying to do what's best for Amara. She needs stability. She needs a parent who can provide for her emotionally and financially. You've proven you can't do either." "I'm her mother," I screamed, tears streaming down my face. "I've taken care of her every single day of her life. How dare you sit there and say I can't provide for her emotionally?" "This is exactly what we're talking about," Whitman said, pointing at me like I was an exhibit. "Emotional instability, volatile behavior. This is why our expert witness determined that Mrs. Williams is unfit." The mediator tried to calm things down. "Perhaps we can find some middle ground." "There is no middle ground," Whitman interrupted. "Sign the agreement, Mrs. Williams, or we'll see you in court. And I promise you, what we'll present at trial will be far more damaging than what you've seen so far." Malcolm stood up, straightening his jacket. He looked at me with these cold, dead eyes and said, "Last chance, Shanice. Take the deal or lose everything in court." Then they left, just walked out of the mediation like they owned the world. Marcus and I sat there in stunned silence. Finally, he turned to me and said, "Shanice, I won't lie to you. This is going to be an uphill battle. They have evidence that looks convincing to a judge who doesn't know the full story. But I believe you, and we're going to fight this with everything we have." "What if we lose?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "What if they take Amara from me?" "We're not going to lose," Marcus said firmly. "We're going to show that judge the truth." But I wasn't so sure. How do you fight against lies that look like truth? The first day of trial was one of the worst days of my life. The courtroom was this big, intimidating space, with high ceilings and dark wood everywhere. The judge sat up on this platform that made him look like he was a mile above us. Everything about it was designed to make you feel small and powerless. And that's exactly how I felt. Small, powerless, terrified. Malcolm sat on the other side of the courtroom with Derek Whitman, and he looked so confident, so calm, like he'd already won. He didn't even glance in my direction. To him, I was already gone. Already erased. Attorney Whitman started his opening statement, and I had to sit there and listen while he destroyed my character in front of a room full of strangers. "Your Honor," Whitman began, his voice booming through the courtroom, "this is a simple case about a father trying to protect his daughter from a mother who has failed in every measurable way." He pulled up the photographs on a large screen for everyone to see. My dirty kitchen, my messy living room, my unmade beds. While Mr. Williams worked 60-hour weeks to provide for his family, Whitman continued, his wife couldn't even maintain basic household cleanliness. These photos show a pattern of neglect and laziness. I wanted to scream. Those photos were taken when I was sick, when I could barely get out of bed, but I had to sit there silently while he lied to the judge. Then came the credit card statements. Whitman projected them onto the screen, highlighting the expensive purchases, handbags, jewelry, spa treatments, fancy restaurants. Mrs. Williams spent over $50,000 in 1 year on luxury items for herself, Whitman said, his voice full of false concern. While her husband was working to support their daughter's education and their family's future, she was squandering their savings on designer handbags and spa days. Lies. All lies. But they looked so convincing on that screen, with the numbers and dates and receipts, all official looking. Marcus did his best in his opening statement. He told my side of the story, how I'd given up my career to raise our daughter, how I'd dedicated 8 years to being a full-time mother, how the photos were taken out of context, how Malcolm had controlled all the finances and used my credit card for his own purchases. But I could tell from the judge's face that Marcus's words weren't landing the same way. Whitman had physical evidence, photos, and financial documents. Marcus had my story. And in a courtroom, evidence beats stories every time. Then came the moment I'd been dreading most. Attorney Whitman stood up and announced, "Your Honor, the plaintiff calls his expert witness, Dr. Simone Garrett." The courtroom doors opened, and a woman walked in. And y'all, when I saw her, my whole body went cold. She was beautiful, elegant. She wore a professional cream-colored blazer and a pencil skirt. Her hair was pulled back in a perfect bun. She walked with confidence, heels clicking on the marble floor. She looked every bit like a successful, credible professional. But as she walked past me to get to the witness stand, I smelled it. That perfume. That same expensive, sweet perfume I'd been smelling on Malcolm's shirts for months. My hands started shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone in the courtroom could hear it. This was her. This was Malcolm's mistress, the other woman. And she was pretending to be an objective child psychologist who had studied me and my daughter. I grabbed Marcus's arm and whispered urgently, "That's her. That's the woman Malcolm's been seeing. I can smell her perfume. It's the same one I've been smelling on him." Marcus looked alarmed. "Are you sure?" "I'm positive," I hissed. "That's his mistress, and she's about to lie under oath about me and my daughter." Marcus scribbled notes quickly, but I could see the worry in his eyes. Proving she was Malcolm's mistress wouldn't be easy. And even if we could, we had no way to prove her professional observations were false. Dr. Simone Garrett took the oath, swearing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then she sat down and proceeded to tell nothing but lies. Attorney Whitman began questioning her, and her voice was calm, professional, and utterly convincing. "Dr. Garrett, can you explain your qualifications?" "Certainly," she said smoothly. "I have a PhD in child psychology from Emory University. I've been a licensed psychologist for 12 years, specializing in child development and family dynamics. I've published numerous papers in peer-reviewed journals and have served as an expert witness in family court cases for the past 5 years." Everything she said was probably true, which made the lies that were coming even more dangerous. "And, Dr. Garrett, did you conduct observations of Mrs. Shanice Williams and her daughter Amara?" "Yes, I did," she said, opening a professional-looking binder. "I conducted covert observations over a 3-month period, from August through October of this year. I observed their interactions in various natural settings, parks, grocery stores, shopping malls, and school pickup locations." "And what did you observe?" Dr. Garrett flipped through her notes like she was presenting scientific data, and then she started lying. Lying about me, lying about my relationship with my daughter. "My observations revealed a concerning pattern of behavior from Mrs. Williams," she said in that calm, professional voice. "On August 15th, I observed Mrs. Williams and Amara at Target. When Amara attempted to show her mother a toy, Mrs. Williams yanked the child's arm aggressively and spoke to her in a harsh, elevated tone. Amara began crying in distress, and rather than comforting her, Mrs. Williams appeared annoyed and dragged the child through the store. My mouth fell open. That never happened. That never happened the way she described it. What really happened was Amara almost ran into the parking lot without looking, and I grabbed her arm to pull her back because a car was coming. I wasn't being aggressive. I was saving her from getting hit by a car. And I did comfort her afterward. I hugged her and explained why she had to hold my hand in parking lots. But that's not what this woman told the court. She twisted a moment of me protecting my daughter into a moment of me abusing her. Dr. Garrett continued, and every word was like a knife in my heart. "On September 3rd, I observed them at Piedmont Park. Mrs. Williams sat on a bench absorbed in her cell phone while Amara played alone on the playground equipment. For approximately 20 minutes, Mrs. Williams did not look up from her phone once, leaving the child completely unsupervised. Another lie! I was texting my friend Keisha about whether they had ground turkey on sale at Kroger, because Malcolm had demanded I make his favorite meal that night, and I was trying to stay within the grocery budget he'd given me. I was checking my phone for 2 minutes, not 20, and I was watching Amara the entire time. During this observation, Dr. Garrett went on, Amara fell from the swing. Mrs. Williams' reaction was excessive and hysterical. Rather than calmly assessing whether the child was injured, Mrs. Williams ran to her screaming, which escalated Amara's fear and distress. This type of emotional dysregulation in the parent can be more traumatizing to a child than the actual fall itself. I was shaking with rage and grief. I ran to my daughter because she fell, and I was scared she was hurt. What mother wouldn't run to her child? What mother wouldn't be worried? She was twisting my love and concern into something pathological. Dr. Garrett delivered her final conclusions, and they were devastating. Based on my professional observations and expertise, I concluded that Mrs. Shanice Williams displays significant signs of emotional instability and poor impulse control. She projects her own emotional distress onto her daughter, creating an unhealthy dynamic. She lacks the consistent emotional regulation necessary for healthy child rearing. She closed her binder and looked directly at the judge. In my professional opinion, Your Honor, Amara would be psychologically and emotionally better served by residing primarily with her father, Mr. Williams, who has demonstrated stable, consistent, and nurturing behavior. I recommend full custody be granted to the father. The courtroom was completely silent. Her testimony had been so smooth, so professional, so convincing. She sounded like an objective scientist presenting findings, not like a mistress lying to help her lover steal his wife's child. I looked at the judge, and my heart sank. He was nodding slightly, taking notes, clearly taking her seriously. Marcus stood up for cross-examination, and he tried his best. Dr. Garrett, these observations you conducted, were they authorized by Mrs. Williams? Did she consent to being studied? Covert observation is a standard and accepted method in my field, Doctor. Garrett responded smoothly. The strength of this method is that subjects behave naturally when they're unaware of being observed. It provides the most accurate data. But you were paid by Mr. Williams for this testimony, isn't that correct? I was compensated for my professional services, yes. But my findings are objective and based solely on my observations and professional training, not on who paid my fee. She was good, too good. She had an answer for everything. Marcus tried a few more questions, but she deflected them all with professional ease, and the judge seemed satisfied with her responses. When she finally stepped down from the witness stand, she walked past me again, and I swear I saw the tiniest smirk on her face. She knew she'd won. She knew her lies had been believed. Malcolm's side rested their case, and it was our turn. But what did we have? My word against their evidence. The second day of trial was even worse than the first. It was my turn to testify, and I was terrified. Marcus had warned me that Attorney Whitman would try to provoke me, would try to make me emotional and upset, so I'd look exactly like the unstable woman Dr. Garrett had described. Marcus examined me first, and he was gentle. He asked me to explain my life as a stay-at-home mother, my relationship with Amara, my daily routine. I told the truth about everything, about quitting my job to raise our daughter, about the sacrifices I'd made, about how much I loved being Amara's mother. I explained the context of those photos. I had the flu, Your Honor. I had a fever of 103 degrees. I was in bed for almost a week, and Malcolm refused to help around the house. He said he was too busy with work. When I was finally well enough to get up, I cleaned everything. But he took those photos during the worst of it, when I was too sick to even stand up. I explained the credit cards. That was an additional card in my name, but Malcolm used it all the time. He'd tell me his main card hit the limit because of business expenses. I trusted him. I didn't know he was buying all those things and charging them to my account to make me look bad. I was doing okay. I was staying calm, explaining things clearly. Marcus smiled at me encouragingly when he finished his questions. And then, Derek Whitman stood up for cross-examination, and I knew I was about to be destroyed. He walked toward me slowly, like a predator approaching prey. "Mrs. Williams," he began, his voice deceptively gentle, "you're asking this court to believe that your husband, a successful professional with no history of deceptive behavior, suddenly decided to set you up with fake photos and fake credit card charges. Is that correct?" "It's not fake," I said, my voice shaking. "It's real. He just took the photos at the worst possible time and used my card without telling me what he was buying." "How convenient," Whitman said with a cold smile. "So nothing is your fault? The mess in your house? Your husband's fault for taking pictures at a bad time? The $50,000 in luxury purchases? Your husband's fault for using your card. You take absolutely no responsibility for anything." "That's not fair," I said, feeling my emotions starting to rise. "I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just saying he manipulated everything to make me look bad." "Do you have any proof of this manipulation? Any evidence at all?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I had no proof, just my word. "No," I finally whispered. "I don't have proof. I just know what happened." "You just know," Whitman repeated mockingly. "Well, Mrs. Williams, this court deals in evidence, not feelings." He walked back to his table and picked up a large photograph. My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming. "Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Defense Exhibit D12. He held up the photo for everyone to see. It was me, in my bedroom. Hair wild and messy. Face red and swollen from crying. Mouth open mid-scream. I looked absolutely insane in that photo. "Mrs. Williams, can you explain this photograph?" Whitman asked, his voice full of false concern. Tears immediately started falling down my face. I remembered that night so clearly. It was 3 weeks before Malcolm filed for divorce. He had come home late, smelling like that perfume, and when I confronted him, he'd turned it all around on me. He told me I was paranoid. He told me I was crazy. He told me I was a terrible wife and an even worse mother. He'd said Amara would be better off without me. And I had broken down. I had cried and screamed and begged him to stop saying those horrible things. And while I was at my lowest, most vulnerable moment, he had taken out his phone and snapped that picture. "Mrs. Williams?" Whitman pressed. "We're waiting for an explanation." "That night," I said through my tears, my voice breaking, "Malcolm told me I was worthless. He told me I didn't deserve to be Amara's mother. He kept saying horrible, cruel things to me until I couldn't take it anymore. And when I finally broke down crying, he took that picture." "So you admit it?" Whitman pounced immediately. "You admit you were screaming hysterically, exactly as Dr. Garrett described in her professional assessment. You admit you have emotional outbursts." "He provoked me," I shouted, my voice getting louder. "He emotionally abused me for months. He said terrible things to me. He set me up." "Mrs. Williams, please calm down," the judge said, his voice stern. But I couldn't calm down. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the injustice of this entire situation came pouring out. "Don't you see what he did?" I screamed, standing up from the witness chair. "He planned this whole thing. He's been with another woman. That psychologist is his mistress. She's lying to help him take my daughter. He stole my money. He set me up. He's trying to destroy me." "Mrs. Williams, sit down," the judge shouted, banging his gavel. I collapsed back into the chair, sobbing uncontrollably. My whole body was shaking. I couldn't breathe. I looked up through my tears and saw Malcolm on the other side of the courtroom. He had his head bowed, and he was making this sad, hurt expression, like I was the one hurting him, like I was the crazy one, like I was the problem. And sitting in the gallery behind him, Dr. Simone Garrett sat with her hands folded in her lap, the smallest smile on her face. They'd won. They'd provoked me into doing exactly what they wanted. I'd looked unstable. I'd looked hysterical. I'd looked exactly like Dr. Garrett had described me in her fake psychological report. Attorney Whitman walked back to his table, satisfaction written all over his face. "No further questions, Your Honor." Marcus tried to do damage control, but there was no coming back from that. The judge had seen me lose control. The judge had seen me scream and cry and fall apart. When we left the courtroom that day, Marcus put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Shanice, I'm so sorry, but we're not done fighting. We still have one more day." But I knew the truth. We'd already lost. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing that tomorrow, the judge was going to rule against me. Tomorrow I was going to lose Amara. Tomorrow my world was going to end. Around midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I got up and went to Amara's room. I needed to see her, to hold her, to memorize everything about her, because I didn't know how many more nights I'd be able to do this. I opened her door quietly. She was asleep, her chest rising and falling peacefully. She looked so beautiful, so innocent. She had no idea her whole life was about to be turned upside down. I sat on the edge of her bed and just watched her sleep. I stroked her hair gently. I whispered, "I love you, baby girl. No matter what happens tomorrow, please never forget that Mommy loves you more than anything in this whole world." I stood up to leave, and that's when I saw it again. That old cracked phone peeking out from under her pillow. Why did she keep that broken thing? She had the brand new iPad Malcolm bought her. Why was this old, barely functional phone so important to her that she slept with it under her pillow every night? I stood there, looking at it for a long time, confused, but I was too emotionally exhausted to think about it. I kissed Amara on the forehead and went back to my room, not knowing that my daughter had been carrying the answer to all of this under her pillow the whole time. The next morning came too fast. Judgment Day. The day the judge would make his final ruling. The day I would either keep my daughter or lose her forever. I got dressed in the best outfit. I had a simple navy dress that I'd worn to job interviews years ago. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at me. I looked exhausted, defeated, broken. Marcus picked me up and drove us to the courthouse. The whole drive, he tried to prepare me for what was coming. "Shanice, you need to be ready for this ruling," he said gently. "Given how the trial went, given your testimony, I think we need to prepare for the possibility that—" "I know," I interrupted him. "I'm going to lose." "We can appeal," Marcus said quickly. "If the ruling goes against you, we can file an appeal. We can keep fighting." But I didn't have the strength to keep fighting. I felt like I'd already lost everything that mattered. We entered the courtroom, and it felt even colder than before, like walking into a tomb. Malcolm was already there with Attorney Whitman, both of them looking confident and relaxed. Dr. Simone Garrett sat in the gallery, wearing another expensive outfit, ready to celebrate her victory. The judge entered, and we all stood. This was it. This was the moment my life would either be saved or destroyed. "Please be seated," the judge said, settling into his chair. He opened the thick file in front of him and began to speak. "This court has reviewed all evidence submitted by both parties, heard testimony from witnesses, and carefully considered the arguments presented. This is never an easy decision, as it involves the well-being of a minor child." My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. "The plaintiff, Mr. Williams, has presented substantial evidence supporting his claims. The photographic evidence demonstrates a pattern of household neglect. The financial evidence shows significant irresponsible spending, and most significantly, the expert testimony from Dr. Simone Garrett provides professional, objective assessment of the defendant's emotional state and parenting capabilities." Every word felt like a nail in my coffin. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "this court witnessed firsthand the defendant's emotional instability during her testimony. Mrs. Williams's outburst in this courtroom, her inability to maintain composure, and her accusations without supporting evidence all corroborate Dr. Garrett's professional assessment." I closed my eyes. This was it. He was going to give Malcolm everything. Therefore, having considered all evidence presented, and most importantly, considering what is in the best interest of the minor child Amara Williams, this court rules." He raised his gavel, ready to bring it down on my life. And then I heard it. A small voice from the back of the courtroom. "Stop!" Everyone turned at once. Standing in the doorway was Amara, my 10-year-old daughter, in her school uniform backpack still on her shoulders. "Amara?" I whispered, not believing what I was seeing. How was she here? Who brought her? School was in session. Malcolm's reaction was immediate and violent. He jumped up from his chair, his face going white as a sheet. "Amara, what are you doing here? Get out! You can't be here!" he shouted, his voice panicked in a way I'd never heard before. But Amara didn't move. She stood in that doorway, small and scared but determined. "Mr. Williams, sit down," the judge commanded, his voice sharp. Malcolm was shaking. "Your Honor, this is inappropriate." "I said, sit down," the judge repeated, banging his gavel. Attorney Whitman was on his feet too, looking just as panicked as Malcolm. "Your Honor, this is a clear violation of court procedures. A minor child has no business being in this courtroom during proceedings that concern her. I demand she be removed immediately." But the judge held up his hand. His eyes were fixed on Amara, and there was something in his expression that I couldn't quite read. Curiosity, maybe, or suspicion. "Young lady," the judge said, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it, "how did you get here? Who brought you to this courtroom?" Amara walked down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing in the silent room. She walked past the rows of seats, past Attorney Whitman and Malcolm, past me, though she gave me the quickest glance that seemed to say, "It's okay, Mommy," and she walked right up to the judge's bench. She was so small standing there, looking up at him, but her voice was clear and strong when she spoke. "I came by myself, Your Honor," she said. "Well, my Auntie Keisha drove me, but I asked her to. She's waiting outside." "And why did you come here, sweetheart?" the judge asked. Amara took a deep breath, and I saw her hands trembling as she clutched her backpack straps. "Because I heard Daddy tell Miss Simone that you were going to take me away from Mommy today, and that's not fair, because Daddy lied. Daddy and Miss Simone both lied." The courtroom erupted. Malcolm was shouting. Attorney Whitman was objecting, but the judge banged his gavel hard, multiple times. "Order! Everyone be quiet!" In the chaos, I saw Dr. Simone Garrett in the gallery. She had stood up halfway, like she was about to run. Her face had gone from smug confidence to pure terror. The judge looked at Amara again. "You said your father lied. What do you mean?" "Your Honor, this is completely inappropriate," Attorney Whitman shouted. "You cannot allow a child to testify without proper procedures." "I'm not testifying," Amara said, her voice stronger now. "I'm showing you something." She swung her backpack around and unzipped it. From inside, she pulled out her old phone, the cracked one, the one she'd been sleeping with under her pillow. My heart stopped. What was on that phone? "Your Honor," Amara said, holding up the phone, "may I show you something that Mom doesn't know about?" The judge stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. Yes, you may." "No!" Malcolm screamed, lunging toward the front of the courtroom. "You can't! That's private! That's my home! She can't!" Two bailiffs grabbed Malcolm and forced him back into his seat. He was still struggling, still shouting, and I had never seen him look so terrified. In the gallery, Dr. Simone Garrett had turned toward the exit, but a female bailiff was already blocking the door. A court clerk came forward and helped Amara connect her phone to the courtroom's display system. The large monitors on the walls flickered to life, showing Amara's phone screen. I held my breath. What was my daughter about to show? Amara's small finger pressed the play button on a video file. The video started. And from the very first second, I knew Malcolm's life was over. The video showed our living room. The camera angle was low and shaky, like it had been recorded from behind something. Behind the large potted plant in the corner, I realized Amara's favorite hiding spot when she played hide and seek. The timestamp said it was from 3 weeks ago, around 10 p.m. On the screen, Malcolm walked into the living room, and right behind him was Dr. Simone Garrett, not in her professional blazer, but in casual clothes, her hair down, looking completely comfortable in my home. Malcolm pulled her close to him and kissed her deeply, his hands running through her hair, in the living room where we had spent 10 years of marriage, where our daughter played. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Someone in the gallery said, "Oh my God." I couldn't breathe. I had known there was another woman, but seeing them together in my home, it felt like being stabbed. But the video was just beginning. The audio was clear. Too clear. Simone's voice came through the speakers. "Baby, are you sure this plan is going to work? What if Shanice suspects something?" Malcolm laughed. Actually laughed. "Shanice, please. That woman is completely clueless. She's too busy playing housewife to notice anything. I've been moving money out of our accounts for 6 months, and she hasn't noticed a single thing." "How much have you moved?" Simone asked. "Almost 400,000 so far," Malcolm said proudly. "All safely in that offshore account under your name. Once this divorce is final and I get the house, we'll sell it and move to Miami like we planned, far away from her." I felt Marcus grab my hand and squeeze it. Evidence. Real, undeniable evidence that Malcolm had stolen our money. On the screen, Simone moved closer to Malcolm, running her fingers down his chest. "And you're sure you'll get custody of Amara?" "Baby, I've got the best lawyer in the city," Malcolm said confidently. "And more importantly, I've got you. Your testimony as an expert psychologist is going to seal the deal." My hands flew to my mouth. He had just confessed. He had just admitted that Dr. Garrett was his mistress, not an objective expert. The video continued. "But what if Amara doesn't want to come with you?" Simone asked. "She seems really attached to her mother." Malcolm's laugh was cold and cruel. "Amara's 10 years old. Kids are easy to manipulate. I've been buying her all these expensive gifts, undermining Shanice's authority. By the time the court gives me custody, Amara won't even want to be with her mother anymore. And if she does, well, kids adjust. You'll be her new mom, a better mom. Someone successful and intelligent, not some unemployed housewife." Simone giggled. "You're terrible." "I'm practical," Malcolm corrected. "Shanice gave up her career to raise Amara, which means she contributed nothing financially. Legally, I can argue she deserves nothing. And with your expert testimony saying she's emotionally unstable, I'll get everything. The house, the kid, everything." "What about your testimony?" Simone asked. "What if their lawyer tries to discredit me?" The next part of the video made my blood run cold. Malcolm pulled out his phone and showed Simone the screen. "This is my insurance policy." On his phone was the photo of me crying hysterically, the one Attorney Whitman had shown in court. "I took this 2 weeks ago," Malcolm explained. "I spent about an hour telling Shanice what a terrible wife and mother she was, how useless she was, how Amara deserved better than her. I kept pushing and pushing until she finally broke down. And when she was at her most emotional, I snapped this photo." "Malcolm, that's brilliant," Simone said with admiration. "I know," Malcolm said smugly. "At the trial, I'll provoke her again. I'll make her lose her temper in front of the judge. Once she has an emotional outburst in court, your psychological assessment will look perfect. The judge will see for himself that she's unstable. No one will question your professional opinion." They kissed again, and then Malcolm raised his wine glass. "To freedom," he toasted. "To getting rid of dead weight." Simone raised her glass too. "To our new life together. And to that stupid woman finally getting what she deserves, absolutely nothing." They clinked glasses and laughed. The video ended. The screen went black. The courtroom was dead silent for maybe 3 seconds. And then everything exploded into chaos. "Oh my God! They planned the whole thing! That woman is his mistress. He set her up." I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. Tears were pouring down my face, but I couldn't even feel them. I was in shock. Complete and total shock. Malcolm was on his feet, screaming, "That video is fake! It's edited. She made it up. You can't use that as evidence." "Sit down," the judge roared, his face red with fury. Attorney Whitman looked like he was going to be sick. All the color had drained from his face. His entire case, his entire reputation, had just been destroyed in 3 minutes. And Dr. Simone Garrett, she had bolted for the door, but the bailiff blocked her path. When she realized she was trapped, she collapsed on the floor, sobbing. "He made me do it!" she screamed. "Malcolm planned everything! He told me what to say! He promised he was going to marry me! I did this because I loved him!" "She's lying!" Malcolm shouted back. "She seduced me! She came up with this whole plan! I'm the victim here!" "Silence!" The judge stood up from his bench, and I had never seen someone look so angry. "Both of you, be quiet this instant." He turned to the bailiffs. "Officers, I want both Mr. Williams and Dr. Garrett detained immediately. Do not let either of them leave this courtroom." The bailiffs moved quickly. Malcolm tried to resist, but they grabbed his arms and forced them behind his back, snapping handcuffs on his wrists. "You can't do this!" Malcolm screamed, all his composure completely gone. "I have rights! I demand you release me!" Dr. Simone Garrett was handcuffed too, still sobbing, mascara running down her face. All her professional polish had completely disappeared. She looked exactly like what she was, a mistress who had gotten caught. The judge turned his attention to Attorney Whitman, who looked like he wanted to disappear. "Mr. Whitman," the judge said, his voice ice cold, "did you know about any of this? Did you know that your expert witness was your client's mistress?" "No, Your Honor," Whitman said quickly, his voice shaking. "I swear I had no knowledge of any relationship between them. Mr. Williams assured me, Doctor. Garrett was an objective professional. I would never present false testimony knowingly." "That may save you from criminal charges," the judge said. "But I will be reporting this to the State Bar Association. Your conduct in this case, even if you didn't know about the conspiracy, was aggressive and unethical. You deliberately provoked the defendant in court. You attempted to manipulate these proceedings. You will face consequences." Whitman sat down heavily, his career essentially over. And then the judge looked at Amara, who was still standing there, holding her phone, looking small and scared but brave. "Young lady," the judge said, his voice gentle again, "that was a very important video you just showed this court. Can you tell me when you recorded it?" 3 weeks ago, Amara said in her small voice. "I couldn't sleep and I heard Daddy's car come home. I wanted to show him a drawing I made, so I went downstairs. But when I got there, I saw him with Miss Simone. I knew I wasn't supposed to see them, so I hid behind the plant, and I remembered what Mommy always taught me." "What did your mommy teach you?" the judge asked. Amara looked at me for the first time since the video played, and my heart broke at the love I saw in her eyes. "Mommy always told me that if someone's doing something bad, you need proof, so I used my old phone to record them. I kept it secret, because Daddy told Miss Simone that Mommy was too stupid to figure things out. I thought it was supposed to be a secret." "Why did you decide to show it today?" the judge asked. Tears started falling down Amara's face. "Because yesterday at school, Daddy picked me up early. He told me that today the judge was going to make me go live with him, and I wouldn't see Mommy much anymore. He said it was for the best because Mommy was sick and couldn't take care of me right." Amara's voice broke. "But Mommy's not sick. Mommy's the best mom in the whole world. She takes care of me every day. She helps me with homework. She makes my favorite pancakes. She reads to me at night. Daddy barely talks to me except when he's buying me things." She looked at the judge with tears streaming down her face. "I heard Daddy and Miss Simone say bad things about Mommy. They said she was stupid. They said she didn't deserve me. But it's not true. And I couldn't let them take me away from my Mommy when they were the ones lying." The judge had to stop and wipe his own eyes. Everyone in the courtroom was crying. Even the bailiffs looked emotional. The judge turned to me, and when he spoke, his voice was full of compassion. "Mrs. Williams, this court owes you an apology. You were telling the truth this entire time, and these proceedings nearly resulted in a grave injustice. I am deeply sorry." I couldn't speak. I just sobbed into my hands. The judge picked up his gavel, and when he spoke again, his voice rang out with authority. "This court finds that the plaintiff's petition for dissolution of marriage